Okay, welcome to the map tutorial. So I'm going to start off by talking about the interface. So in your top bar you have a toggle between the map view and the table view, as well as a button for the tutorial through which you probably access this video. Similarly, on the right hand side you have your filter column with a variety of filter options, as well as a reset filter button to control those options. And as you look at the map, you see your legend here in the bottom right, which we'll talk about shortly. So this map is created with something called cluster markers, and basically it groups the projects by region, and the numbers you see correspond to the amount of projects in that region. As you zoom in, you see that the cluster markers are reactive and they'll break off into smaller clusters. As we're zooming here, we're starting to see the actual markers of the projects that we're interested in, which is the carbon offset projects. So if we continue zooming, this is a good time to mention the markers themselves. The smallest marker grouping is associated with the median value. So if we take all the markers in all the data sets, and we were to estimate their annual emissions by tons of CO2 per year, we get a certain median value. The smallest markers are associated with less than that value. If we then go ahead and look at the mean value of all those projects, we get our next categorization of markers given by this coloring here. And so on and so forth. We go with a standard deviation, and then the largest projects being more than a standard deviation. Let's keep zooming in and kind of see more of the markers. We're going to start here in Alaska. So we see that there's some large projects in Alaska by estimated annual emissions. And let's click on a marker. When you click on a marker, you're displayed the project information that's relevant to that project. So this particular project is from ACR. ACR stands for American Carbon Registry. And we're presented with a variety of information regarding the project, including documentation, the total number of credits, and the estimated annual emission reduction, to name a few. On the left-hand side, you're presented with a visual representation of the credit retirement. So given the amount of credits issued, how many have been retired? It's really useful to quickly gauge, are these credits being sold, or are they still on the market, and how many of them have been created. Okay, so we've looked at one big project. Now, if we zoom in a little further, we see there's some smaller projects and medium-sized projects. Let's click on a medium-sized project just to show the difference between. So here we have a different project, the Dayan Native Community Forest Project. And we see here on the left-hand side, it's the opposite situation. You have very many credits that are not sold. But you can attribute this to a variety of reasons. One being the project is newer, starting in 2020. So yeah, it's a useful way to quickly gauge information regarding a variety of different carbon offset projects. Okay, so those are the markers. Right now, if we zoom out, we can see that there's projects all over the world. That's because we're by default displaying all of the projects and all of the databases. Say we want to look at only American Carbon Registry. Okay, now we're presented with a variety of projects throughout the Americas, both north and south. Obviously, there's many more in the north. But it brings us to one of our first filter options, which is filter by country. Depending on the database and the nomenclature that they choose, in this case, ACR has chosen to abbreviate the countries. We can then choose to further filter this choice. So we're in ACR and we want to, for example, choose BR. BR stands for Brazil, and you are currently only showing projects in Brazil. When you select a filter by country, you're automatically populated with options to filter by project type. When you filter by project type, you're adding an additional filter to the filter by country. And in this case, you can stack them or you can choose one at a time. So say we're only interested in forest carbon projects. We've gone from having all of the projects displayed to just the one in Brazil. And we click on the project. We can see, yes, it's in Brazil. We can see that it has issued credits and that it has retired all the credits. It's been around for nearly 12 years, and so on. As you can see, if we add additional filter criteria, we are seeing more projects populated. And you can see now, okay, I've added a renewable project. Here it is. It's in Brazil. It's performed by Santos Energia, developed by Santos Energia, and you have some additional information regarding the credit issuing and retirement. Now, it goes both ways. If we reset here and again select American Carbon Registry, we can also start the sorting rather than by country. We can start it by project type. So if we are interested, for example, in forest carbon, we can see that there's only forest carbon projects in Brazil and the US. It's worth mentioning MG. In this case, I'm not even sure what it stands for, but the reason it's not being populated is that because even though it's in the database, it's not being populated to the map because there are no annual emissions that can be attributed to the project. And right now, it's important to make that distinction. You're only visualizing entries from the databases which have attributable annual emissions. So there might be, it's not to say it doesn't exist, it's just to say that it doesn't have any attributable emissions. Or we should say emission reductions. So we've selected forest carbon, and now again, we're left with only the choices that are valid for specifically forest carbon in this case. So we see again, okay, we can choose Brazil or we can choose the American projects. This works between databases and between project types, and in that sense, it's very flexible and powerful. So before we go and show the table view, let's just show a little bit of the functionality. So we've been so far looking at a American registry, but let's look at something more international. So Gold Standard and Verra are the two largest voluntary registries. The American Carbon Registry is more associated with compliance. Once we select Gold Standard and Verra, we see there's very many projects populated all over the world. This is where these filters really shine. So when you have a large selection between both project types and countries, it's very useful to quickly be able to select, for example, Brazil, and say one of the neighboring countries, let's say maybe Bolivia, and we can quickly see projects from both Verra and Gold Standard that are in Brazil and Bolivia. Likewise, we're seeing only the project types associated with projects in those countries. So if we, for example, look here, okay, we have an agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So let's click agriculture, forestry, and other land use. And yeah, now we're seeing projects only from that subcategory. So if we deselect it, we see there's 220 projects. We select it, okay, we're now down to 96 projects spread between Bolivia and Brazil. This is a useful time to now show you the functionality associated with the table view. So these filters apply not only to the map, but also to the toggle of the table view. So when we select the table view, we're shown this information in a table form. And it's very useful because you can sort by the different columns. So on top of showing you the information in a more organized manner, you can now sort by your own decision. So you can go ahead and, for example, use the project ID to sort. You can use the project type to sort. So now we're starting, because we've selected only agriculture, forestry, and land use, this wouldn't be very useful in this case. But say you have many different selections, say you have all of these selections, you can then go ahead and sort through all of them. Arguably one of the most useful sorting features in the table is sorting by estimated annual emission reductions. When you sort that way, you're basically sorting from largest project to smallest by the estimated annual emission reductions. So in this case, we're seeing that the largest project from these categories which we've selected is in Bolivia. It's associated with agriculture. We have the description of the project here, and if we click on the documentation, we're taken to the Vera page for the project. We can see the developer, the proponent, is from Australia. We see it's in Bolivia, so it is indeed the correct project. So we've now selected a few more categories. It's pretty useful. We're in agriculture. We have a reforestation category. We have an energy demand and a transport category. One of the best features of the filtering is the ability to search within a description. So if we want only to look at red projects, we can go ahead and filter that, and now we see we're down to roughly 70 projects. So when we select one of these projects, we see immediately, okay, there's red in the description. There's red in the description. If we look at the table view, we'll see that, yes, all of these projects have red now. And again, you can sort through all of these. They should mainly be agricultural forestry. And again, it's a quick way to find the projects that you're looking for, or to just gain more information regarding certain projects. So right now we've only looked at Bolivia and Brazil. We can modify this. We can add some more countries, etc. It's a flexible tool, flexible mapping, and ultimately you can use it as you wish. So let's say we're looking at now countries in Asia. Let's say we're interested in India. You can see there's very many projects in India. Let's say we're interested in Malaysia. We're still looking in Gold Standard and Vera here. So regardless the amount of projects, the table view still functions in the same effective way. We can sort it through all the projects. It goes 100 at a time, so we can go ahead and jump to the next page. It holds the sort order, whichever sort order you decided, it holds it. So in this case, estimated annual emissions, and you could see it's continuing to sort them by that category. You could do this by whichever category you choose. And so yeah, it's a very useful way to quickly sort through projects based on the criteria that you have. Yeah, other than that, it's flexible between databases. It's flexible between project types. If there is a description, you can search it. Yeah, that's the majority of the features. And if you have any feedback or any additional questions, let me know either in the comments or with an email, and I'll be happy to respond.